Why is it that your legs seem to betray you first? Not your eyesight, not your memory, but your legs, once strong and steady, begin to falter. You notice it getting out of a chair, climbing stairs, walking across the room. A quiet instability, a creeping weakness, as if the ground beneath you has subtly changed. And here's the part no one tells you. This decline doesn't begin at 80. It starts as early as your 60s, sometimes even earlier. And once it starts, it accelerates fast. There's a reason researchers call it the silent fall before the actual fall. Because when your legs weaken, your independence follows. Your world shrinks. Your risk of falling doubles. And with one bad fall, everything can change, permanently. But what if it didn't have to be this way? What if the weakening of your legs wasn't just part of aging, but the result of specific, correctable habits? And what if by making a few key changes, rooted in science, not guesswork, you could restore leg strength faster than you thought possible? In this video, you'll discover the surprising signs that your legs are weakening before it becomes obvious. You'll see the exact differences between those who age with mobility and strength and those who lose both too soon. And most importantly, you'll learn how to turn the tide, even if you're already noticing the decline. We'll follow the lives of two people, both in their 70s. One still walks 5 miles a day without a cane. The other struggles to get out of bed alone. Same age, same town, completely different lives. Their stories hold the clues. If you've ever felt your legs growing weaker, even just slightly, or if you're afraid of losing your balance or becoming dependent on others, then stay with me until the end. Because what you'll hear could give you back years of freedom and movement. Comment number 1 if you're ready. Let's start with something many people overlook: the quiet disappearance of fast-twitch muscle fibers. These are the fibers responsible for quick, explosive movements, standing up from a chair, catching your balance if you trip, reacting to a loose step or a sudden change in direction. They're not about brute strength. They're about speed and survival. By the time you're in your 60s, your body is already losing these fibers. Not all at once, not in a way you can feel right away, but slowly, quietly, they fade. And unless you actively do something to preserve them, they won't come back. This is why so many older adults, even those who feel relatively healthy, suddenly begin to notice small hesitations. That brief second before standing, the need to brace before moving. Those are early signs, not of age, but of muscle fibers going dormant. Frank never knew this was happening. He thought walking around the house was enough. But walking doesn't preserve fast-twitch fibers. Sitting doesn't challenge them. Over time, his body adapted to his lifestyle, and those fibers atrophied. The result? Slower reaction time, weaker legs, more instability, and a growing fear of falling. Helen took a different route. She learned in her early 60s that maintaining leg strength wasn't just about movement. It was about the right kind of movement. She began doing simple strength exercises, standing from a chair without using her hands, gentle lunges, short sprints during her walk. She didn't need a gym, just consistency. And those small efforts kept her fast-twitch fibers alive and active. Science backs this up. A study published in the Journal of Gerontology showed that targeted resistance training significantly preserves fast-twitch muscle fibers in adults over 65 and can even rebuild them when properly stimulated. If you've ever felt a subtle slowness in your legs, not pain, just hesitation, that's your body warning you. It's not too late. but the time to act is now. Now moving to the second factor that silently affects longevity, the way sitting too much rewires the body, especially the legs. We often imagine that rest preserves energy, that staying off our feet protects our joints. But past a certain point, the opposite becomes true. Prolonged sitting doesn't just lead to stiffness. It tells your muscles they're no longer needed, and the body listens. What's more troubling is that this doesn't take decades. Studies show measurable muscle loss after just 2 weeks of inactivity. And once that pattern sets in, reversing, it becomes harder. Not impossible, but harder. Because the muscles have begun to adapt to being unused. Frank fell into this trap without realizing it. After retirement, his days grew quieter. He'd sit for breakfast, then watch the morning news, read a book, maybe a nap. Some afternoons he didn't stand for more than 5 or 10 minutes at a time. It felt harmless. But over months and years, that stillness became dangerous. His glutes weakened. His thighs lost tone. The muscles around his knees stopped firing the way they used to. So when he did try to stand or walk, the body couldn't respond like it once did. That's when the real damage began. Helen, on the other hand, made a quiet rule for herself. She never sat longer than 30 minutes without standing up, even briefly. She kept a small kitchen timer near her reading chair. Every half hour she'd stretch, squat lightly, or walk around the house. It didn't interrupt her day. It shaped it. That tiny habit preserved her circulation, her balance, and the neurological connection between her brain and her legs. Research from the American Journal of Preventive Medicine confirms this. Older adults who break up long periods of sitting with short bouts of movement show significantly better leg strength and mobility, even if their total activity remains low. You don't need to run marathons, but you do need to interrupt stillness. If you've been sitting for a while, stand up right now. Your legs need that signal. Here's the third behavior that slowly undermines your health, and it has less to do with muscle and more to do with your brain. It's called neuromuscular degradation. Every movement you make, from lifting a foot to catching your balance, starts in your brain. Electrical signals travel through your nervous system, telling your muscles when and how to fire. But here's the part most people miss. If that signal isn't used regularly, it weakens. The pathway fades. The connection grows faint. This is why leg strength isn't just about muscles. It's about communication, coordination, precision. Frank's body didn't just grow weaker. His brain stopped sending the right signals. He'd try to lift his foot, but it dragged slightly. He'd move too slowly when catching himself. Not because he didn't want to move, but because the message didn't travel fast enough. The mind-body connection had frayed, quietly and over time. Helen trained her muscles, yes, but she also trained her brain. Not with crossword puzzles or apps, but with movement. She practiced standing on one foot while brushing her teeth, walked backward down the hallway for balance training, took dance classes at her local community center. These actions forced her brain and muscles to coordinate in real time, and that kept her movements sharp, steady, and responsive. Scientific studies, including one from Frontiers in Aging Neuroscience, show that balance and coordination exercises preserve not only motor function, but also cognitive health in older adults. Movement, especially varied and intentional movement, literally sharpens the brain. This is why simple activities like dancing, tai chi, or even playful games with grandchildren do more than keep you active. They keep the signal between your brain and body strong, and that signal is everything. If you've ever felt your legs not responding fast enough, it's not just muscle, its connection, and you can rebuild it. Up next, the fourth sign that many people dismiss, chronic inflammation. It's often described as a slow burn, invisible but relentless. And in the aging body, it becomes one of the most destructive forces, especially for your legs. After 60, low-grade inflammation becomes more common. It doesn't always show up as pain or swelling. Sometimes, it's just fatigue, slower recovery, stiffness that lingers. But underneath, something more serious is happening. Your body is breaking down muscle tissue faster than it can rebuild it. This process has a name, inflammaging, and it plays a direct role in muscle loss, especially in the large, powerful muscles of the legs. Frank's diet changed gradually over the years. More convenience foods, more sugar, fewer fresh ingredients. He wasn't overeating, but what he ate fed the flame of inflammation. Combined with inactivity, this created a dangerous loop. Inflammation caused muscle breakdown, and weaker muscles made movement harder. So he moved less, and inflammation grew worse. Helen became aware of this risk after reading a book on aging. Well, she didn't go on a radical diet. She just made slow, steady shifts. More leafy greens, berries, oily fish, turmeric tea in the afternoon. She started cooking more at home, reading labels, staying curious. And as her internal inflammation lowered, she noticed something remarkable. Her joints felt looser, her energy steadier, her legs stronger. Science backs this up. A major study published in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism found that older adults with higher levels of inflammatory markers had significantly lower muscle mass, particularly in the legs. But those who adopted anti-inflammatory diets and lifestyles saw measurable improvements in strength and function within months. This isn't about perfection, it's about awareness. Inflammation doesn't shout, it whispers. But over time, it erodes the very foundation of movement. If your knees ache or your legs feel heavy more often, it might not be age. It might be inflammation asking for attention. As we move forward, there's a fifth pattern that deserves attention: the role of the mind in physical balance. Most people think of balance as something purely physical: ankles, knees, posture. But what keeps you upright isn't just muscle. It's also confidence, awareness, and emotional stability. Balance lives in the brain as much as in the body. After 60, something curious happens. A single misstep, even without injury, can plant a seed of doubt. That doubt becomes hesitation. And hesitation is dangerous. Because when your mind hesitates, your body follows. Frank remembers the exact moment he began to fear falling. He didn't fall. He just stumbled on a curb one afternoon. But afterward, something changed. He started looking down more, walking slower, avoiding uneven ground. His world got smaller, not because he couldn't move, but because he stopped, trusting himself to. That fear, over time, rewired his sense of balance. His posture shifted. His center of gravity moved forward. And ironically, the fear of falling made him more likely to fall. Helen experienced a similar stumble, but instead of retreating, she leaned in. She talked about it with her doctor, started attending a local balance class that used soft mats and slow movements. She practiced retraining her brain to trust her steps again. It wasn't easy, but over time, her confidence came back. And with it, her physical balance improved. There's a growing body of research, including findings from the Journal of Geriatric Physical Therapy, showing that balance training improves not just physical steadiness, but mental confidence. In fact, programs that combine gentle movement with mindful awareness reduce falls by nearly 40% in older adults. Balance is a dialogue between your body and your mind. If either side stops believing, the whole system wobbles. If you've ever felt afraid to walk on grass or uneven pavement, your body might be strong enough, but your mind needs reassurance. Let me share the sixth reason why many fail to maintain good health. Not the amount of protein, but the timing of it. We've all heard that protein builds muscle. But after 60, the body becomes less efficient at using it. This is called anabolic resistance. It means your muscles don't respond to protein the way they used to. They need more, and they need it at the right time. Here's what often happens. Older adults eat most of their protein at dinner. A big piece of chicken or fish in the evening after a day of light eating. But by then, the body is winding down. It doesn't build muscle in the same way at night. And without activity during the day, that protein doesn't go where it's needed. Frank did exactly this. A light breakfast, a sandwich for lunch, then a full dinner with meat and vegetables. He thought he was eating well, and he was, in terms of calories. But his muscles were starving all day. And with inactivity, even the protein he did eat couldn't fully reverse the decline. Helen took a more strategic approach. After learning about anabolic resistance, she began spreading her protein evenly throughout the day. Greek yogurt, or eggs in the morning, a protein-rich lunch, smaller dinner portions. She paired her meals with light movement, a walk, some stretching, light weights, to stimulate muscle use. Her body responded. Her strength stayed stable, even as she aged. A landmark study in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition confirms this. Older adults who distribute protein intake evenly over 3 meals preserve more muscle mass and strength than those who consume it mostly at dinner. It's not just what you eat, it's when and how you use it. If you often feel weaker in the morning or sluggish through the afternoon, your muscles might be missing their most important fuel window. Finally, there's one last habit that might surprise you. The quiet toll of loneliness. It's easy to see strength as something purely physical, muscles, bones, joints. But the body doesn't live in isolation. It listens to the heart, to emotions, to connection. And when those begin to fade, the body does too. After 60, many people begin to lose their daily social anchors. Retirement, children moving away, friends passing, and slowly, without noticing, solitude becomes the default. Not the peaceful kind, but the hollow kind. Frank didn't think of himself as lonely. He kept up with the news, talked to the clerk at the store, but deep down, he felt disconnected. He didn't want to burden anyone, didn't ask for help, and over time, that emotional distance became physical distance. He moved less, ate less, laughed less. And as the weeks passed, his legs felt heavier, his steps slower. Helen understood the risk of isolation, not just for the heart, but for the body. She made small efforts, joined a local walking group, volunteered at the library once a week, called her sister every Sunday. These weren't grand gestures, but they gave her rhythm, accountability, and most importantly, joy. Science affirms this deep link. Research from the Journal of Aging and Health shows that socially isolated older adults experience faster declines in physical mobility, balance, and overall strength, even when controlling for other health factors. The body, it turns out, is listening. When it feels forgotten, it begins to shrink. But when it feels needed, when it feels seen, it responds with life. If your legs feel weaker, ask yourself, when was the last time you truly felt connected? What steals our strength? In old age isn't always dramatic. It doesn't arrive like a storm. It creeps in like silence. In the moments we stop moving, stop reaching out, stop believing we can still grow stronger. Frank didn't lose his legs in one day. He lost them in 100 unnoticed moments. Quiet mornings where he chose the chair over the sidewalk. Small doubts that kept him from trusting his steps. Meals that filled his stomach but starved his muscles. Days without purpose, weeks without connection. He never meant to give up his strength. It simply faded while he was busy surviving. Helen, on the other hand, chose a different path. Not because she had better luck or more energy, but because she stayed curious. She listened to her body. She asked questions. She tried, failed, tried again. She didn't wait for permission to protect her independence. She fought for it, one habit at a time. And that made all the difference. Your legs, your strength, your movement are not just about staying upright. They are your freedom, your confidence, your dignity. They are the difference between depending on others and walking into the world on your own terms. Yes, the body changes after 60, but decline is not guaranteed. Weakness is not destiny. You've seen the early signs, the reasons behind them, the habits that protect or erode your foundation. Now the choice is yours. Will you keep sitting and letting time do the work for you? Or will you stand today and do the work that time cannot take away? Your legs are listening. If you've made it this far, comment number 9 and let us know you're ready to take the first step. Like this video if it spoke to you. Subscribe to stay connected and turn on notifications, because the next video could be the one that changes everything.